Thank you. Welcome. My name is Melanie Leonard, as she introduced. I have a firm in Chicago, outside of Chicago, Illinois, where we do residential real estate, and I've been using Clio since 2008.
And I'm Vanessa Vasquez de Lara, and I have a family and probate firm that's based in Miami, Florida. I've been using Clio since 2014. The most profitable thing I learned was at last year's ClioCon when Melanie talked to me about implementing calendaring and Gmail, which you'll hear about in a few minutes.
So some of the features that we're going to take a look at today, now keep in mind, we're not going to teach you how to use the features. So in order to do that, you might want to check out the Clio labs and the Clio help that's here on staff, or additionally the help that's online within Clio. But we are going to take a look at some of the features that we have that you may want to put into practice into your own practice. Now keep in mind, I don't know your firms as well as you do, so a lot of this is going to be your own analysis that we'll guide you through, and you're going to apply that to your own practice. But some of the things we're going to take a look at today are...
So we're going to talk about your calendar, syncing your calendar with outside calendars and or utilizing the calendar feature, the task and task list that you should be creating in Clio, your contacts, making sure that you have all of your contacts in your Clio, including opposing counsels, judges, judicial assistants, etc., your communications, whether it's bringing in and syncing your emails or keeping phone logs or even using some of the outside vendors that you can link with Clio, such as Vonage and Ruby. Clio for Gmail, and now we found out about Clio for Outlook this morning. Documents and being able to share, download your documents into Clio and being able to share them through Clio. Your custom fields and the kinds of information that you should be keeping inside of Clio, and your Clio mobile app if you're not already using it.
And even if you're using some of these features, you may think, oh, well, I already used that. We're going to look at some of the ways that you can be using these features that may bring out their fullest potential that maybe you're not taking advantage of.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is your calendar. So keeping your calendar on Clio allows you to share access with other people on your calendar. So that's going to be if you've got a hearing and you need to make sure that you're letting your client know, or if maybe you're having a telephone conference with an opposing counsel, you can basically share anything on your calendar through Clio Connect. So this is a client view through Clio Connect. If they were to receive a calendar invite, this is what it's going to look like for them. So when they log in and they see their dashboard, they're going to be able to see anything that you have invited them to do. Additionally, they can also look at a calendar view so that they can kind of get a better feel for when something has already been scheduled for. So keeping your calendar in Clio allows for amazingly easy billing through your calendar. And this is the feature that I was talking about that helped to revolutionize some of what I did with my practice when I came last year. You can literally create your calendar entries in Gmail. I actually use it from Gmail into Clio, but it does have sort of a multi-function where you can do it from Gmail to Clio or from Clio to Gmail. And the fantastic thing about it is that right from your calendar, you can do your billing. So that means for somebody like me, who's very bad at making sure that I'm keeping track of my time, this feature helps me to sit in one sitting, look at my entire week on a Friday and go, Monday, this I was in court for, and click on that time entry and create not only a time entry for the actual activity that's on my calendar. For example, I had a hearing. I know that I left my office at 8, the hearing was at 9, and I got back to my office about 10:30. So I need to create a time entry for that 2.5-hour block. But maybe that morning before I went to court, I also prepared for the hearing. In the same time entries, I can create multiple entries. Let's say I'm working on it on a Friday because I'm doing everything for that hearing. If I'm doing that billing all in one swoop, well, I can put in the preparation that I did that day or any other day because it literally pulls up like a billing tab. So I can put in the preparation I did for that hearing, the attendance at that hearing, the preparation of that order when I got back to my office. So in that one calendar entry, I can put in everything that I needed to bill for that specific incident. So this is, it's extremely useful because all of the matters, all of the things are pre-populated. So here is your time entry that happens directly from your calendar entry. So you've already got your matter there, you've already got some of the description, anything that you included in your calendar is going to be already pre-populated in that time entry. So here's a picture of actually Mel's calendar on Google, and you're able to simply put in any of the things that you need blocked on your Clio calendar, you can use your Google Calendar in order to be able to block that time in your Clio calendar. So if you have perhaps a Google Calendar where you're keeping your personal things, you're able to simply put in your personal things, have that sync to Clio so that those times are being blocked off and your staff is not scheduling you during that time. So this allows for easier billing and easier scheduling when you're using your Clio calendar. So
This was a particularly busy week. With 2 kids and 2 businesses, it's busy.
this is Mel's Calendly calendar. And whenever you use these external calendars, they sync with a Google Calendar. So like I said, if you're syncing your Clio calendar, a Google Calendar, you're able to also use external calendars to be able to schedule appointments and be able to charge for those appointments when people are scheduling them. So this drastically reduces the amount of emails you're going to have going back and forth, trying to figure out when you're available, when you're not available, and be able to charge those consult fees if you're using a Square appointment.
So when implementing these features, like the calendar, you want to keep in mind that data migration, transferring your calendar information from one calendar that you might be using now into Clio or vice versa, is probably not the highest and best use of your time. You could probably pay someone to do that on your behalf or automate it in some respect so that you're not spending your billable hours taking that time. In fact, you could be losing money by doing that yourself. So you may be using some external calendar programs like these that you may want to then try and sync with Google, which then will sync with Clio in order to have all that information in Clio, again, for the easy billing and the easy access with other employees that are using Clio in your office. You want to familiarize and educate your users in your office with the Clio app so that appointments can be made on the fly, whether you're in court or meeting with a client outside of the office, and familiarize your users with the global add button. You'll see on the app, it's this green button down here. And once you click that green button, you'll get the middle screen there, which shows you all the different things that you can add right away. And right at the bottom there is an event. So you're in court, the judge schedules the next hearing, you can input it right there in court, but you don't have to wait till the time you get back to your office, in which case maybe you've lost some of the details or forgotten some of the information. The other thing you might want to consider is using separate calendars. Now, of course, Clio is very easy to use separate calendars for different users, but you may also want to use a calendar for the conference room so that doesn't get double booked. You may also want to use a separate calendar for deadlines. So for example, in my office, the purple calendar is a deadline calendar. So I make them all-day appointments telling when the deadlines are. Now, the reason I do this is because there are some situations where a deadline in a task, because our tasks also allow for deadlines, is not the true deadline. So for example, let's say the judge says your brief is due on Thursday. Then I'm going to put the deadline on Thursday so I know that is the deadline to get that brief in. However, I want the task of writing the brief by my associate to actually be completed on Tuesday so that I have time to go ahead and review that before the actual deadline of Thursday. So in my office, we keep track of deadlines on a separate calendar as all-day appointments that show up at the top, and then we have separate deadlines for the actual task of preparing the brief or whatever you're working on.
So your task and your task list are basically going to be able to help you to assign work to others, whether it's your paralegal, the associates, or even yourself. It helps prevent your team from duplicating work. Right now, we just hired our 3rd law clerk. So I sit with them in a meeting in order to be able to assign tasks. A lot of the tasks that they're doing now is sort of some of the things that my paralegal was handling. But now by being able to simply give them all of these tasks and assign them to the law clerks, the paralegal can easily go into Clio and check, okay, what are they working on so that I can make sure that that's not what I'm working on. Even things that she would have normally done, such as a notice of hearing or a request to produce or something, she's able to check, well, what are they working on so that I can work on other matters. And it can also act as a checklist to be sure that you are taking all of the steps necessary. An example of this in my office for family law would be when we're preparing, for example, the initial pleadings on a divorce. Well, we know that there's going to need to be approximately 5 documents prepared. So all of those can be set out in my task list so that I have it automated that when somebody's preparing these cases for the initial petition, we can make sure that everything is being done and it's being checked off. And from your task, you can bill for it as well. So it keeps you organized in the sense of making sure that you're not skipping steps, that you are taking care of everything, and that you're also billing for it as the work is actually happening. The task lists are also helping to communicate your expectations to your clients. You can give tasks to your clients. So in the example I was just giving you about a divorce, well, there's a lot of initial discovery that has to be provided to our office from the client in order to be able to send that out. So I can actually assign them tasks and send it to them through Clio Connect so that they can sort of check off as they're producing things to me. They can check off when they're going ahead and they're doing that, so that I know that they've already provided something to me and I can check on the status on the things that are pending. Another great thing that you can do is to write the actual procedure in the body of a task. And this is going to help particularly when you're training new staff. When you bring a new paralegal or a new associate in, these task lists are already created. So it's simply a matter of assigning them a task and putting them on these task lists so that they can see exactly what needs to happen. Obviously, the more experienced your staff is, they're already going to know this. But whenever you have to bring in somebody temporary, whenever you need to do anything that perhaps there's a new procedure that's going to be changed in your office, this is a good way of sort of making sure that all of your staff knows exactly what they should be doing because you've detailed it out here. An important thing to do whenever you are considering that you're going to need to hire new staff is to have the old staff write out exactly what they're doing so that the new staff knows the steps to take whenever they come on board. So this can also be done by your employees, not just necessarily you, but you might sit your paralegal down and tell her, list every single step that you take when you're opening a new file. We just brought on a new paralegal, and by having these task lists, it helps the old paralegal sort of give her the way how it's done in our office, as opposed to her doing things the way that she did them in her old office.
Now, I've been to, as I'm sure you have, 3 sessions already this morning, and already in the 3 sessions that I've attended, there's been talk of value-based billing versus hourly billing. And there's been a lot of questions from the audience about the fact that it can be a hard transition to make. If you decide that value billing is something you want to do and try and do more of a flat fee or other type of arrangement for billing, then it can be a hard transition from hourly to that flat fee. So one of the things that I would highly recommend that you do is use this task list to help you determine whether or not your flat fee billing is going to be profitable for your office. So the way to do this, and one of the analysis that I highly recommend that you undertake, is to go ahead and build out your task lists. So for example, if I'm going to do a residential real estate contract, is what my office does up in the Chicago area, we're going to have very specific tasks that we undertake to do that. So we're going to first contact our client, introduce ourselves, set up a first meeting, review the contract with them, reach out to the other attorney. The list just goes on and on and on. However, there are some other practice areas, such as litigation, where it's harder to make that full list because things are different. In one case, your motion might get granted, in the other case, it won't. And so that's going to drastically, or could drastically change the steps that you take in your litigation. So instead of doing a full task list, you may want to do sets of task lists. So for example, we have a task list for when we sign up a new client. There's 6 or 7 steps that we do in order to engage with that new client. However, if you're in litigation and you want to do a particular motion, maybe there's 5 steps that you undertake in order to do a particular motion. So you can have, I don't want you to think of a task list as having to incorporate the entire matter for your client. It may be smaller groups. So what I would encourage you to do is go ahead and write out your task lists, even if it's just like a brain dump on a list of paper, and come up with those either full lists or set of lists, and go through and do this analysis. So for example, this is the beginning of a list in my office that we do when we have a new client. So we're going to send out a questionnaire for them to fill out. We're going to follow up for the completed questionnaire. We're going to enter all that data into Clio in our custom fields, which we're going to talk about in a little while. And we're going to prepare an engagement letter, so on and so forth. So write out your tasks. And then the next thing you're going to do is assign who typically does that task. So whether it's the attorney or the receptionist or whoever it is. Now keep in mind, if you're a small practice like I am, you may be doing all these tasks yourself. But that's only at the beginning, right? The idea is that eventually we're going to get more help and eventually we're going to be able to assign these out to other people. So even though you may be doing them all at the current time, you may want to spell out whose particular duty this will be in the future. So then you're going to take, in your next column, you're going to put out when this task has to be done in the timeline of events. Now, this doesn't have to be an exact date, but for example, whenever we send out a questionnaire, then 2 days later, I'm going to follow up with my client. Did you get the questionnaire? Do you have any questions? Have you filled it out? Can you send it back to us? That kind of thing. Maybe 3 days later, I'm going to hopefully have that back and enter all the information into Clio. But this is not an exact science. Obviously, I don't know how long it's going to take my client to get back to me. It could be significantly longer. So I'm going to put estimated dates here. How long does it typically take? How long do I want to check in on it? And these dates are always going to move around. As the supervising attorney or whoever's the supervisor of the work, they're going to be looking at these tasks daily, every other day, to readjust where they fall in the work process. So then the next column, you're going to put down how long does this typically take? When I'm writing up an engagement letter, how long does it take? Well, I'm using Clio templates, so it's pretty fast, okay? When I enter the questionnaire information into the Clio custom fields, how long does that take? Might take a little bit longer. So estimate the time that it takes to actually perform these tasks. Then I'm going to assign an amount to it. Because how long does it usually take and how much am I paying that person to do it? So, if I can get an administrative assistant or a receptionist or a part-time college student or whatever and pay them $10 an hour, then it's going to cost me $2, right? And you go down this analysis for every task on your list and determine how much is it going to cost you to provide this service. So if this is a full real estate residential transaction, then at the end of my list, I'm going to be able to add up how much did it cost me to provide this service to my client. Okay, let's say it costs $400 and I'm only charging $350. We have a problem, right? So this is an analysis that I would highly encourage you guys to make within your own firm, within your own service offerings. Now again, it may not be your entire litigation process. Obviously, each case is a little bit different, but you may very well be able to analyze how much is it going to cost me to do a motion in limine? How much is it going to cost me to do a motion to dismiss? It's not an exact science, this is an estimate, right? But you'll need to know whether or not you're in the right ballpark. So if I'm charging $350 and it's costing me $400, I'm going to have a big problem. On the other hand, if I'm charging $800, then I'm in good shape. So that's an analysis I highly recommend that you all do within your firms for each service offering that you're going to provide. Not only will it tell you, what the flat fee should be, or if you're making any money, but it might also help you to guide, how do you want to charge? Do you want to charge a flat fee for this part of the process? And then if we have to go into the second part of the process, I'm going to charge another different flat fee, and so on and so forth. Depends on what kind of offerings you have. So one of the things you might want to consider is implementing a new policy requiring all your staff to reference their own task list multiple times per day, because that's where they're going to find out what they're supposed to be doing each day, right? And check off the completed tasks as they bill for them so that we can keep track of what work has been done and what work needs to be done. And as you think of things that you want them to do, because again, not all the tasks I want them to do are going to be on this list, because it's a pre-populated list. As I think of another one, hey, in this particular situation, I want to make sure that we do this. I'm going to create the task right there in Clio. It's going to show up on my assistant's screen. I didn't have to email her. She didn't have to take the time to read the email. I didn't have to, if she's not available, she's working on something else, I didn't have to interrupt her workflow, make her less productive. So it can be a very valuable tool in order for us to communicate back and forth to each other.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is your contacts and why you should be housing your contacts in Clio. So you want to make sure that everybody has in your firm can access the contacts for each individual matter. Different people can be associated with multiple matters. So an example of that is if you have a referral source that generally sends you clients, well, you can add them as a contact on the different matters that they've referred to you so that at a glance, you're able to pull up this person, see all of the related matters that they have, and you can realize, wow, that person just sent me 5 cases this year. I really need to do something really nice for them in order to thank them. Or if they're calling and they're saying, hey, that case I sent you, which case was that? Well, you can easily do a search by that person's name, pull up the related matter that you have for them, and you're able to immediately see exactly what matter is it that they're calling you about. So using the related matter under your contact helps you to determine exactly what it is that you're going to be talking to that person about. The next thing that we would recommend that you do is use the picture feature. Most people don't use this. For people who network a lot and you meet a lot of people and you see a lot of people and you collect a ton of those business cards that just sit on your desk doing absolutely nothing at all, you can collect them, put them into your Clio, put in all those new contacts so that you're able to reference to them later. Find their pictures online. Now with Facebook, with LinkedIn, with Twitter, with all kinds of social media, it's pretty easy to input those people into your Clio, put pictures there, and that way it helps your staff to sort of personalize that these are real people that you're dealing with. And it also helps you to remember them.
Okay, so how are we going to implement this? Because I see a lot of people thinking, there's no way I'm going to take that business card off of my desk because I have like 100 on there and type it into Clio. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it takes too long for me to do that because in the meantime, I'm going to phone call, I'm going to get an email. It's just not going to happen. So there are a couple of options. As I mentioned earlier, data entry is probably not your most profitable thing for you personally to be doing. So hire a college student, hire your brother. There are a lot of apps right now out there which will scan the business card for you and put them into a contact database, in which case we'll talk a few minutes how you can get that information then into Clio. But again, data migration, putting that into Clio is probably not your personal best use of your time. You do want to think about things like syncing with Google or syncing with another app that you're using. So for example, if you have a bunch of contact information in a third-party app that you've been using for years, it may not sync with Clio directly, and that's okay. Does it sync with Google? A lot of stuff does. So you can look into that and use Google as a tool to get your information out of that contact database into Google and then thereby into Clio.
And don't get overwhelmed. Start now. Maybe don't take those 100 business cards that you've already collected, that are already collecting dust. Start today forward. The ones that you collect at that event tonight, you got 5 new cards, put those in so that you don't sort of get overwhelmed with, well, but it's going to take me so long to catch up. Well, you're never going to catch up if you never get started. So sometimes it's better just to sort of figure out, okay, this is a good feature. Let me get started and let me, do this from now forward.
Which is also a great tip for not only the contacts, but for every feature that we've talked about here today. Really what you need to do is go ahead and evaluate for your own firm what you think is going to be most profitable and most time-saving for you, and then start with that feature. Don't try all the features at once. It's exhausting. It's taken me since 2008 to use a lot of these features, and there's still some that I don't use. So the idea being that we want to make sure that you have access to the information and pick the one that's best for you. Start there. Don't worry about the rest of them. Until next year.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about is your communications in Clio. So you want to make sure that you have easy access to be able to see perhaps emails or phone logs, et cetera, in one place for a client. When you save your emails, and anybody who's working on a file is going to be able to see exactly what communication has happened, perhaps with an opposing counsel, with the client, with the judicial assistant. When you save your communication under the client's matter, anybody can sort of take the file and pick up running because they're able to see, okay, this is what happened, this is the communication, and you don't have an upset client that you're calling and that's perhaps saying, but I spoke with the paralegal about that last week and the associate 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to you about that when we met 2 months ago. If you're keeping track of all of the things that are happening with their communications, it sort of helps you to be able to provide better service because everything is in one place. Also, if you're using Ruby or Vonage, these are some of the providers at this point that are able to simply put in all of the records of your phone interactions with your clients or with opposing counsel, et cetera, into Clio directly. So those are some of the really good features that at least those providers have. And as we saw this morning with the API that they're trying to do and the contest and all that stuff, it's probably going to be an increase of the providers that are going to be able to provide some of these different things. Now I was talking to Melanie. We have voice over IP, so I know that all of our call records are somewhere. And they can be downloaded, et cetera. So there might be a way for me to figure out some program that's able to sort of sync those with my Clio. So that's going to be something I'm going to be looking into. So on your phone logs, you're able to quickly include which contacts you're dealing with, which matters you're dealing with, and the subjects on these calls. So even when you're not automatically syncing, if you're creating these phone logs, you're able to reference whatever took place. So if I spoke with a client today about the hearing that's coming up, and then they don't show up to the hearing, I can reference quickly back and say, but you and I spoke on this day, and I told you we had court on that day, instead of sort of the back and forth of, well, you never told me that, I didn't know that, because I've got detailed notes here that allow me to be able to reference back to whatever it is that we had a conversation about. And the best part, I can automatically bill from here. When Mel and I were preparing for the presentation, we noticed that in the new Clio, it actually has where it says time entries. Now there's actually a button so that you can actually open a phone log to add while you're having the conversation, start a timer so that you're able to keep track of the time that you're on the conversation, and you can bill it immediately from that phone log. So that's fantastic. When opening a new matter, you can also have your admin add the matter's email address. When we were playing with it with the new Clio, we noticed, I don't know how many of you use that, where you email things into your individual matters from your email inbox. And that's a feature that new Clio seems to sort of have missing, but we've heard in the rumor mill that it is coming. It's not, they're not taking that away. It is coming back. So you are able to sort of email those things, those details, and have them input into your matters.
Yeah, so the latest is that it'll be back in October. So when you look at your new Clio screens right now, this button will be gone. This is from the old Clio screenshot. You won't see it there, and in October it'll magically appear and we can all start using it again.
So the next thing is storing your documents in Clio. Why would you want to do that? It's more secure than sending documents through email to your clients. So if there's a particular item that, that's maybe some discovery that you received from opposing counsel that you want to send to your client, instead of just sending them an email, which has zero security, you can put that into your Clio and share those documents directly from Clio through Clio Connect. This allows you to share documents actually not only with your clients, but with your opposing counsels, with anybody that you need to be sharing documents with. This is a great way of sort of making sure that those emails to them are secure, because they're doing it through Clio Connect, so they have to actually receive an email. If you choose to do it this way, you can also send links, but you can have them receive an email and have to log into their Clio Connect account in order to be able to access those things. So that's gonna keep it in a more secure fashion when you're sharing documents either that you are receiving or that you are sending out.
I'm pretty sure this is a picture of the Cook County Courthouse in Chicago where, no joke, within the last 10 years, they did a big data migration from an old computer system to a new computer system, and something wasn't coded correctly, and essentially thousands of files were just lost because no one knew where they were because the whole data migration was messed up. So again, putting documents into Clio from scratch is probably not your best use of time. What I would recommend to you, though, is starting today or starting tomorrow or Monday when you get back to or Wednesday when you get back to the office, start with those documents. A lot of people have e-fax now or some other digital fax kind of way where it comes in digitally anyway. It was an attachment to an email. It's already been scanned. It's not like you have to scan it. Save those documents in Clio. So start from now as opposed to going back. Now, keep in mind, if you're currently using something like Dropbox or Box, that those systems can sync with Clio. So it may be a very good way for you to get all that information into Clio. Now, keep in mind, if you continue that sync, depending on the type of Dropbox account that you have, you may lose some of that security because now it could be compromised on the Dropbox side as opposed to through the Clio side. So it may be a good tool to get the information into Clio, but you may have to determine whether you want to continue that sync or discontinue using Dropbox or upgrade to a better level of Dropbox. What I also want to do in order to help you through this process of adding documents is create a task that reminds you, hey, at this point we should have this contract or this document, make sure there's a copy of it in Clio, okay? Now, the other thing you can do is make a task to remind yourself to share documents with your client. At this point, we probably have an order that we got in court, so make sure we share it with the client. Make that be an automated task that comes up in your work process, in your task lists, that you don't have to think about every time. It just automatically pops up and reminds your assistants to be able to do that. And obviously, that's going to provide a much better service to your client if those are very consistent things that happen as opposed to oh, shoot, we got to go send that copy to the client.
So why use custom fields? Custom fields are something that it's sort of like a secret tool in Clio that most people don't realize, most people don't use, and can be really effective in how you're managing some of your files. It allows you really fast access to some of the information in your files without having to dig through it, because you're having them input, you're having your staff input some of this data, either when the client comes on or while the matter is happening. It allows you to generate form documents, which we're going to talk about later, much quicker, much cheaper, and with less error when you have the information already included.
That first screen, or the screen from a second ago, is basically the top of the matter, right? You're all pretty familiar with this. And then we start scrolling down, and these are all the custom fields that I made for my real estate transactions. What type of mortgage is it? How much is the contract price? What are the, what's the tax proration? Is there a home warranty included? All the information that, to me, if my client calls up and says, did we have a home warranty? I can't remember. Do I need to take a look at that? I don't have to search through the contract, scroll to page like 13 of the contract. I can just look on this page and it's all right here for me to be able to access quickly. Then if you keep scrolling down, you'll see that at the bottom here, I've got some custom fields that are just like yes, no check boxes, okay? These are custom fields that I'm only using to create documents. My client's not going to call me up and ask me about these things down here. What's going to happen is I'm going to just check off yes or no, because I know that that's something that I want to use in my document that I'm creating. So the information that I want to access very readily when my client calls or the other attorney calls, that's what I'm going to put up top, right? But the information that I'm only using for my letters, that's what I'm gonna put on the bottom, because I don't need to reference it. It just needs to be housed somewhere so that it'll create my letter properly when I use my Clio document template, which we'll talk about more in a few minutes. Okay, so there's a list of tips that I wanted you to keep in mind when you are implementing custom fields into your practice, because it is a very, very strong tool that, in my opinion, is gonna save you a lot of time and energy. So the first one is designate one person in your firm to create the custom fields. So you may have a brainstorming session where you all talk about what field would be helpful to you. You know, maybe if you're in an estate planning practice, maybe the date of death needs to be in there. Maybe the case number needs to be in there. Maybe the courthouse, a lot of information in there. But if you don't have one person that it's funneling all through, you're going to get a mess of fields, and it's going to be so much more messy than helpful that it's going to become counterproductive. So make sure that you're putting all those custom field ideas through one person who's then going to create the custom fields for your organization. You want to organize your custom fields. We talked about that a few minutes ago. We want to make sure that the things you need and use most often are at the top, and the things that you're not using as often are at the bottom. And Clio does allow you to change the order of your custom fields right now, and in the future they'll allow you to organize them even better. Keep the fields consistent by using field sets. So for example, let's say that maybe you do divorces, and you have a certain set of custom fields that you use for contested divorce and uncontested divorce. So the field sets may be different depending on what kind of matter you're working on. However, they're consistent within that type of matter. So you don't want a contested divorce that has, this contested divorce has 10 custom fields and this one only has 5. We forgot to put in the other 5. Even if the information is no or not applicable or something, put the fields in there so your eye gets used to where you're supposed to be looking at when you need that information quickly on those matters. Use Control F on your screen to find the field you're looking for. If you're really overwhelmed by what you're seeing on the screen and you just don't know where that date of death is because there's all kinds of dates in there, then go ahead and just click Control F to be able to just type in death, and it'll bring you right there so you don't have to spend as much time looking. Review the templates that you're already using in your firm. I'm willing to bet that even if you don't call it a template or you don't recognize it as a template, you're not writing your letters from scratch every time, at least most of them. You're not writing your forms or your motions from scratch most of the time. So, find the templates you're already using, the things you copy from, that one file that was so good that you always copy it in the next 10 files. Find that one, take a little time to find it, and then go through and determine what would make a good template and which ones do you use the most often. Because you're going to want to prioritize working on the things that you're doing all the time. Whereas, maybe there's a motion that you've written once in the last year. Don't start with that template because it's going to be a waste of your time. Start with the one that you're doing every day or every other day.
And there's going to be some things that are, so for example, in my office, we use Form Builder. Used to be Product, and it's now Form Builder from Lexis. So a lot of the court documents we use Form Builder for, but there's always going to be that engagement letter that you send the client, the retainer, the thank you closing file letter. There's going to be, things that are not specifically perhaps court documents, but you use them all the time. Anyways, the request for hearing, we use that in every single file except in uncontested. So there's going to be some of those documents that you're just using regularly. When you have clerks like I do, it helps to have them already created so that you can, go to the closing letter instead of thinking, oh, the last client we did that on was, et cetera. I think there's one motion that we just did that I've told the clerks 5 times in the last 2 weeks. Oh, go to that one file. We did that motion for child support and retroactive support. That one was a really good one. Go find it and then do it for this file.
So to that very point, I'm going to skip to the one that says, don't forget, you can create Word documents, but also you can fill out PDF forms. So if you take that, that PDF form that isn't available to fill out online anywhere else, and you turn it into a picture and put that in your Word document, you can actually put your fields on top of the picture. So it looks like you filled out the form. So keep in mind, you can use this not just for Word documents, but also for those forms that you're not able to fill out online anywhere else. Next tip for implementing, I started this one and it was hugely successful in my office. It was overwhelming to me to think about sitting down on a Saturday or something and just coming up with all these templates, because that's just overwhelming to me. So instead, as I'm going through my practice, I would come across, okay, time to write this kind of letter. And instead of writing the letter, I'd write a template. I started with started writing the letter and put the fields in when I came to them. That way, when I'm done, I put it in Clio, the template comes out, my letter's done, right? But not only that, I just wrote the letter for the next 500 matters that I have of that same type. So don't think of it as having to sit down and just start your template library. Just next time you have to write a letter, next time you fill out that form, make it a template then. Now, there's obviously, I make it sound kind of easy, there's a learning curve to it obviously, so make sure that you talk to Clio or go on the online help within Clio. It was very helpful to figure out how to create those custom templates. And then the last one, conditional fields. Also a learning curve, but way worth it. The amount of time we save in my office from using conditional fields is huge. Now, for those of you not familiar, a conditional field is going to be something like, if I check off this box, then put this paragraph in the letter. If I don't check off that box, don't put the paragraph in the letter. So if then, right? And they can be very, very helpful and very powerful. So whether it's you or someone on your staff or my wonderful husband that researches how to do conditional fields, do it. It's well worth the time.
So why do you want to consolidate your information into Clio? Clio really works as a shared brain for your office. As your practice grows, when you've got more assistants, more employees, more internal contacts, more external contacts, it really works as a shared brain where you've got sort of all of the information that you want to access about somebody, about a matter, about a contact, etc., in one specific place. You have less need for emails that get lost, emails that never make it, emails that they accidentally delete, or at least they tell you that. You kind of have an ability to kind of go back and, Clio tracks when things are deleted and you can see exactly what happened. So, there's a little bit less of that. There's less need for that internal communication. It's accessible by everybody, so anybody can see the task that someone else is working on. So like I said, my paralegal can see what the law clerks are working on so that she's not duplicating the efforts that they're making. You can be more productive. You're all working on the same information. So there's going to be less emails about what is it that we need to be doing for this client? What is it that we need to be doing for that client? I have it set up so that my law clerks share one like an account. So one clerk comes in Tuesday mornings and Thursday, Friday. Another clerk comes in every single day. Another clerk comes in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So again, being able to work sort of as a shared brain. So your Clio helps you achieve your business goals. So we've got that you want to grow, you want to expand, and then you want to take on the world, or at least the legal world, or at least the legal world in Miami. Family world. I want to take over the family world in Miami. Whatever it is that your goals are, Clio's going to be able to help you get there. Keeping your information consolidated helps to prevent duplicate data entry in multiple programs, and it allows you to better use your data as you grow. When I started using Clio, it was my paralegal, my file clerk, and the part-time bookkeeper in one office. And now we are in a 3,500 square foot office, and it's 3 clerks, 2 paralegals, an associate who's wonderful and is here, a client relations specialist, a bookkeeper. So I mean, and we are still hiring people. So Clio sort of works with you whether you are very small or whether you're small and continuing to grow, and it grows with you. So another thing that you can do, that you can make sure that you're doing, is keeping track of the information about your clients that you want your staff to know. If there's a client that may be still living with their spouse, so you don't want to send mail to that house and might accidentally get opened by the opposing party. So you can have your information in your Clio to make sure that you're not mailing anything to the mailing address, but that you're mailing things or you're only emailing, etc. So you may know, for example, on your referral sources, if you're tracking them in your contacts and related matters, that their favorite football team is the Dolphins, who yesterday apparently did not do so well. But if you keep track of those kind of little details, when it's time to maybe send them the 3rd, 4th, or 53rd gift, you kind of have some of their information on there so that you can, maybe make those gifts or those the times that you're reaching out a little bit more personal.
Okay, so how are we going to integrate Clio into our workflow? Because now you're going to come out of here with all these great ideas. I should go and do this, and then I'm going to put this task into play, and then I'm going to, set up this template. But don't do it all at once. So my first basic tip is go ahead and use a browser with tabs and open multiple Clio windows, okay? And you want to put other things in there, like on our example here, we've got, my email is through Gmail, so I want to have that open all the time. I also use DocuSign a lot, so I've got that one open as well. So, using those tabs to your advantage and opening multiple. I remember the day I figured out you could do multiple Clio windows. It was like a breakthrough for me, because I know, seriously, I was getting very frustrated having to go back and forth. So learn from my mistakes. You can also toggle your work with different windows, whether you're using Windows itself or a Mac. In this example, we have a window open for Word, we have a window open for Clio, and we've got a window open for a PDF that I'm viewing. Keep all that open at once and become proficient in being able to go back and forth between them will save you a lot of time. Again, make sure all the users have access to that mobile app, because as we've talked about a lot this morning, mobile is the future, and if you're not on it, then it's just going to slow your progress down. If you're using Gmail, make sure that all your users have familiarity and are using the Chrome plugin for Gmail and Clio, because it does a lot of things for you and makes your workflow a lot easier. Another idea is to have users in your office share their workflows with each other. So for example, Vanessa and I, if we're in the same firm, maybe we find a time to sit down and talk about how you're doing things. There are a lot of things within Clio that can be done in multiple ways, and what's more effective for one person might not be as effective for another person. So for example, if we want to add a contact, we can go to contacts there and click on add a new person. Or we could just use the global add button at the top of the screen now in your new Clio that will go right to a new contact.
For those of you that haven't started using the beta, these are some of the screenshots from the new Clio. So if it looks kind of weird and you're like, but that's not my Clio, it will be.
So then here's the third method. You could go into the matter itself and then add a contact directly from there, and it allows you to create a new contact. So there's 3 different ways, just with that one example, that you could be doing things, and sometimes one method might be easier or faster, sometimes another might be easier or faster, but by actually having that conversation with each other, it can help reduce that learning curve. So some tips, because how are we going to make this happen again? Make sure that you designate some admins or somebody that's going to help you to actually put the information into Clio starting at the beginning of the matter. So don't wait until you're 2 weeks into the matter, because now you've just lost a lot of productivity, in my opinion. It will help you incorporate Clio right at the beginning of the matter and not lose that time and that productivity. That's the kind of information that Clio can house, not just for you, but for your assistant too, because let's say they call her up and say, well, I'm the one that talked about, oh yeah, did you find that place in Naperville? Well, now they're like your best friend, right? So that's definitely something that I would recommend. Another thing to look into is Zapier. Now, if you were at the Clio conference a couple years ago, it was like all about Zapier. And for good reason. Zapier will help you connect Clio with a ton of other apps that you may or may not be using yet. One thing I recommend is if you're having some pain point in your practice that you think, man, there's got to be an easier way to do this, and Clio can't do it because, let's face it, Clio can't do everything. It's not going to make me dinner. Then I'm going to go to Zapier and I'm going to say, what's my problem? Okay, I'm having a problem with calendaring. I want clients to be able to make an appointment without actually talking to me, because that's like a third of my emails back and forth. When can we meet? When can we talk? So go to Calendly, look at the menu on the right there that talks about the different apps that they support, and start researching those, because those are going to be able to link to Clio and save you a lot of time and energy. So this morning, Jack stole my example. I swear it was not planned. But I was thinking about the idea that the easier you make something, the more likely someone's going to do it. In his example, he was talking about how Amazon made it easier for people to buy detergent. They made a button, you press it, it just arrives. It's like magic, right? So my point is, the easier you make it to use Clio and to implement it one feature at a time, not all the features at a time, one template at a time, not all the templates at a time. The easier you make it, the more efficient you're going to become and the more successful you're going to be, because you're not inundating them with new things and new ideas. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.